Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. So about 8 months ago I started a build in progress video series on this 25-gallon tank here, and the plan was to do a final update on this with all of the equipment, all of the livestock, and kind of cover the unique challenges of having a tank with this much sunlight from these big windows here. But things didn't go as planned and life kind of got in the way. I kind of got burnt out on reefing, and I did just enough to keep my tanks alive and kind of manage that. So the last thing I wanted to do was film, edit, and produce more content. So here we are 8 months later with an update on this tank. First off, all the leather corals in here are absolutely exploding. I think the amount of natural sunlight that comes through these windows really sparks growth. Plus, I don't have any filtration on here, so I'm sure there's plenty of nutrients in the water. The ruby red xenia on the left and the true blue xenia on the right are growing like weeds for me, which I like because they're great corals. But I think the crazy amount of sunlight that comes through the windows keeps their colors a little muted, because when I had them in my main tank with just LED lights, they looked a lot richer, but they're growing really well in here, so I'm not too concerned. I did recently add a Cespitularia frag, which looks awesome under natural light. I think they look better under sunlight than they do artificial light. I also snagged a nice orange fungia, or whatever the genus is now. I know they just recently changed as well. At first it didn't like all the sunlight and kind of bleached out, but I moved it over to the left a little bit and I think it might be starting to color up a little bit better. I previously had a bunch of Fimbrophiliad here, some hammers and frog spawn, but I moved those out of the tank as well. They were growing well in the tank, but the colors just didn't look good under the natural white light, so I moved them to my other tank. With this tank, I initially had the light set to 100% blue, and then with the natural sunlight, it should have made a balanced spectrum, but it didn't blend very well. So I opted to move anything that needed LEDs to look good out of this tank, and I'm trying to just keep like the leather corals and some of the LPS that look great under natural light as well. Thankfully, leathers and Xenidae type corals do really well and look really good under white light. Initially when I set this tank up, I added 2 chalk bass, and they did fine on their own. They kind of stayed to their respective caves. But once I started adding more fish, they were kind of territorial in such a small space. So I moved those out of here. Then I ordered 2 skunk clowns from ORA. So I think I got an orange skunk and a hybrid or misbar pink skunk because they did not get along. And the one that got bullied looked more pink than this orange one here. So I ended up rehoming that skunk clown, and now I just have this orange one in here. There's a lawnmower blending in here, and while I still have some algae in the tank, I think it does a pretty good job of keeping at least the rocks clean. I scrape the glass, but I leave the side wall, which I think is supposed to be the back wall on a peninsula tank. I leave it with the algae so it has something to eat. I also initially got a lynx goby, which is a smaller sand sifting goby from Biota, and it was doing really well, and then all of a sudden I think it got flukes or something. It had some patches on its eye and on its cheeks, kind of matched the description of a fluke. I gave it a freshwater bath and it died shortly after. It did such a good job at cleaning the sand, so I got another one. So at this point, I think I'm just gonna stick with the lawnmower blenny, the orange skunk clown, and the lynx goby. So some other inverts I recently added were a trio of sexy shrimp, a porcelain crab, and a skunk cleaner shrimp. I have some Nacerius snails and some hermits and maybe some Cerith snails that kind of keep things clean. I wanted to add all the shrimp and the crabs initially, but it was so hot in DC this summer that I kind of had to wait until we had a more mild week to get those. So finally added those, so hopefully those inverts will do well. This is still a super simple tank. In the last 8 months, I haven't changed any of the equipment. I'm still running the Radion XR15 Gen 5 Pro. Still use the Nero 3 for flow. I have one of those AI Axis return pumps, and then I modified an Innovative Marine 11 watt all-in-one UV filter to fit this tank. Other than the UV filter, I think I run a bag of carbon every now and then, and that gets changed out whenever I remember, so probably every couple months. And then I have the Tunze auto top off to keep the salinity stable. The stand I built is still holding up pretty well. I need to figure out a better way to mount all my equipment underneath because it's not quite sticking to the foam underneath the tank. Not sure what I'm gonna do, if I'm gonna do a hatch that kind of comes down and clips up under the tank, or maybe I'll make a drawer here that kind of slides out or back. Not really sure, but I'm not digging all the wires hanging out underneath. I think my daughter might have pulled some of that crap off as well, so that's always a challenge. When it comes to maintenance, I don't test the water in this tank at all. Maybe I'll do salinity every now and then just to make sure that it's not creeping around too much. But usually I just do a 5-gallon water change with water I take out of my SPS tank, which is about a 25% water change for this tank. That happens about every week or two. I feed the fish enough, I don't feed the coral, and I scrape the glass a few times a week just to keep it looking nice. I may add at some point, I may take these rocks here, move them forward, add a rock behind there and put some gorgonians to add some more dimension towards the top of the tank. My brother has been keeping some backups that I used to have in old tanks. So I have pieces of the Tracy Morgan gorgonian, the dark purple with white polyp gorg, and then the bushy pink one. So I might put those back in just to kind of add some more dimension up here, because the coral that are in there right now aren't going to grow upwards that fast. So other than adding some of those, I may not do much else to this tank. As a little bonus update, I'm still running the 3.8 gallon Pico tank. It is pretty much all Favia type corals and maze brains, and one lone blue Kenya tree that kind of came off of the Nano tank and actually is blue in this tank, where the other tank it's kind of brown. So this is another low maintenance tank. You know, it's an all-in-one, but it just has a heater, the return pump, the light, and this gravity fed auto top off. Otherwise there's literally no filtration, there's no carbon, there's no nothing. It gets dirty from time to time, as you can see, and I have to scrape the glass, which is kind of a pain in the ass in this small tank. But I don't feed it really or mess with it otherwise. It just gets pretty much an 80 to 90% water change out of my display tank. So I just drain it down until I start sucking sand up and then fill it up with water once a week. So that is it for the update on my Nano tank. The next update will probably be once there's significant coral growth in here. So let me know if you have any questions or comments about this tank or how I run it. Otherwise, I will see you on the next one.